the last lesson, what we did was we added some bump to the car paint so it looked really nice. Alright, so what I want to show you now is remember last time we had rendered that, so now we have these little this warping of the paint that happens as the paint gets layered on top of each other. You can also see that happening a little bit here, like these lines that would be 100% perfect in CG. We've added a little more detail there. So the next thing is to select any of the glass objects right here, and we're going to graph. That's actually not graphing, let's try that again. This is input and output connections. We're going to graph the material, and that shows us the glass, which is, as you can see, a Phong shader. We don't want that. So this is going to be an aiStandardSurface, and we can delete the shading group and reconnect to this here. So now if we click on your shading, click on your node here, go onto the presets, we're going to look for glass and then replace. So everything that had the everything that was connected to the shading group, we're now just replacing with this, and then I'm going to render one on the AC. So you can see that even has its effect here. You can see that instantly changed all the materials in the viewport. So I can actually demonstrate that to you live. So this is the Phong shader that we're going to connect to the shading group, and watch that change. And then here you have the aiStandardSurface that we changed to the preset. So Arnold has a whole bunch of presets there that you can just use. So once you do that, everything that had that shader connected to it is completely changed all at once. So the head glass here, I think, has a different shader connected to it, so we're gonna have to figure out what that is, and more than likely we're gonna have different settings depending on where the glass is located on the car. So I'm gonna do some changes now to just make sure that the glass shader was working. I switched to a different HDRI just to make a point that when I had first changed the connection from the Phong shader to the aiSurface shader that has a glass preset, the glass was coming out black, and sometimes you actually need to, just a quick reminder, just to update the full scene, and it just refreshed all the connections that you actually see something. So the next thing that we're going to work on is just giving the appearance of the glass shadow just a little more wave to it, just a touch, because when you see cars with windshields, I mean, it's not going to be perfectly straight. It has some waves to it. This one, I think it had some modeled into it, I think, but I'm just going to show you just in case you want to add just a little more surface deformation without actually affecting the mesh. You can actually use the same type of method we use with the bump node to get these slight wobbly effect, but just much larger across the area of this surface. Alright, so just in case you actually wanted to know how to change the color of the windshield, you can actually just look at this, watch this. So you can just go into the transmission, because this is where a lot of the magic is going to happen. So set the saturation really low, because for instance, if I set the saturation high and then render that, you're going to see that this changed just a while ago. Let me just pause this. So look at this area right here. You're gonna see there's a very green tint. looks pretty good. I might just keep that one right there so you see how it changes that green tint. A lot of cars have that greenish, automotive greenish, like when you look at a reflection of a mirror, if you look far enough it actually gets pretty green, so I think that's highlighted in some of the car glass. So this to me looks a little bit too much, so I'm going to cut that down, see if that helps. No, I actually like it better, so I'm just going to turn it up just a touch. So this is the color that we're working with, and I actually do like that. Next is going to be the bump mapping, which in the same AI standard shader, usually as well too, when you swap these shaders, it's a good idea to label them. Let's see, A6 glass. So this is the, some people put SHD for shader, so that it actually shows up in here, and when you swap it out, it's a good idea for me personally to delete it. I think that keeps the shade clean, even though yes, technically they're going to be, you can tell the difference between what is a found shader and what a standard surface shader is. I just think it's a good idea to rename and delete so you can have less of these shaders that came with the asset. So we're going to be moving on to the bump, and what we do here is just click on this checkered box, click on this Maya drop down, and then type in bump. You should see bump 2D. It's a pretty similar process, and just like last time, press tab and then AI noise. It only accepts the vector values, so put that in. And if you re-render this, it should give you some pretty funky shapes. Now I know this is gonna be a very small value, so I'm gonna put this at 0.01. Gonna have that, yeah. And then we're gonna give this a couple octaves. So let's do that 4. So you can see how, let's get the camera out just a bit more. So you can see how it's starting to balloon and give you some weird shapes. This is one of the areas where you're gonna have to just start messing around. I'll mess around with it and then kind of give you those values. Alright, so after a couple tests, I realized that just adding the noise with its default settings, 1, and well, these are the two nodes, these are the two knobs or values that you would be changing. You'd be changing just the octaves and just the scale. So when you're changing the scale, you would change it, you change all 3 of these to just get a more uniform look. Now I did a test render where these were set to, say for instance 20, and it looked like this. And the scale, essentially the larger the number goes up, or just the larger the number, it gives you more ripples. Now within those ripples you can have octaves. So I'm just gonna very quickly show you what that looks like. So the scale is the main ripple, and the octaves are the ripples within the main ripple. Let me show you that real quick. Alright, so these are the main ripples at 20, 20, 20, and then I put 5 octaves in here, and you can still see the main ripples, but what it does, it just adds a little more texture to it. And as you know, this actually works very well for the surface of walls. If you just want to animate these, you can set a key and have this animate in a way. So I just wanted to show you that really quickly. Alright, so these are the, so just remember to set it back to default values. If you were following along, octaves 1, font 1, and you can see that this is the default curvature. Nothing added, no bump, no noise, and this is with the noise added. It's extremely subtle, but when you have light that's just dancing across the surface of this, it gives it an extra layer of realism. You can see the difference there. Now the geometry itself is not changing, it's just the how it looks as the light comes across. You can see that, especially here. See these little striations here. You see how it kind of gets a little bit wider, so you're gonna see very, very interesting light movements or reflection, like the movements of the reflection across the surface. Alright, so we're heading into the last part of this now. What you want to do is turn on thin wall. That's under geometry, so usually it's tucked away here. So when you click on the shader, this comes up, and this, again, this is your hyper shade. So put this here. So when you click that, scroll down, drop down tab geometry, and you're gonna click thin wall. Now what that does is pretty much what it says. It doesn't treat this glass as if it's this extremely thick, like you know, like 12-inch thick piece of glass with a very heavy refraction. It treats it as if it's a thin piece of glass, which is what we want. So just turn on this thin wall right here. So usually, just to check, I usually sometimes render the asset in just different look environments. So this is really what the Look Dev Kit is good for. You can change the HDR to different looks and just start to see how the light is starting to dance across the asset. And if you want, you can zoom in to different areas to really see how things are being affected in these different scenarios. You can see, okay, well, is the glass doing what it's supposed to do? Is the paint doing what it's supposed to do? This particular asset also, just to let you know, which again, you always kind of deconstruct the asset that you want. This one does not come with any interior, so this one would be pretty lightweight, pretty good for shots that are a bit further away. So I switched the HDR again to this very traditional studio setup, and zooming in, you can see that I'm also very, very happy with how the spec is coming off here. So that's very good, just in case I just happen to decide to do a close-up. So I'm going to see you in the next one, where we're going to be doing some other stuff.